Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you are having a moment of peace and self-care wherever you are right now. Today, we are diving deep into a topic that is both heartbreaking and incredibly liberating. The moment you finally stop explaining yourself to the person who refuses to listen. The narcissist. If you have ever felt like you were standing in front of a brick wall, tirelessly detailing your feelings, your reasons, or your boundaries, only to be met with twisted logic or blank stares, you know this pain. It is an exhausting cycle where you pour your energy into justifying your very existence, trying desperately to make someone with a fundamentally different operating system understand human empathy. But that cycle stops today. It is time to reclaim the precious commodity that is your time and your emotional energy from the endless void of their validation game. For years, or maybe even decades, you operated under the false premise that if you just found the right combination of words, the perfect analogy, or the most logical defense, the narcissist would finally have that aha moment. You believed they would suddenly see your perspective, apologize for the damage, and treat you with the basic respect you deserve. But let us be painfully honest with ourselves. That moment never came, did it? They do not want to understand you. They want to control the narrative, and your explanation is simply ammunition they use to load their psychological warfare weapons. Think about why you kept explaining. It stems from a deeply human, compassionate desire for connection and closure. You were trying to close the gap between reality and their warped perception of it. You were seeking justice, seeking validation, and most importantly, you were seeking safety, hoping that if they understood your pain, they would stop inflicting it. But the narcissist interprets explanation not as a plea for understanding, but as an admission of guilt, a weakness they can exploit, and an invitation to further debate and distort the facts until you feel crazy. When you are dealing with a person whose core identity is built on external validation, that crucial narcissistic supply, your detailed explanation is essentially a delicious meal they consume. Every tear, every carefully constructed sentence defending your actions, every time you try to prove your innocence, it is fuel for their ego. It confirms their false sense of superiority because look, they have you running around, jumping through hoops, trying to earn their approval. The dynamic is clearly established. They are the judge, and you are the perpetually guilty party pleading your case. So, what happens when you decide to starve the beast? What happens the moment you physically and emotionally pull back, zipping your mouth shut, and refusing to engage in the circular argument they thrive on? This is where the magic and the inevitable chaos begins. This choice, the choice to withhold explanation, is the single most terrifying thing you can do to a narcissist because it fundamentally challenges the architecture of their control system. It is like pulling the plug on their life support. The first immediate reaction you will witness is utter confusion, bordering on disbelief. They are programmed to expect the fight, the defense, the emotional outburst. When you calmly say, "I am not discussing this further," or when you meet their accusations with complete silence, their established playbook is instantly rendered useless. Their initial thought is usually, "Wait, did they not hear me? Do they not care about my opinion?" This confusion quickly morphs into intense frustration because their usual manipulation tactics are now bouncing off a protective shield you have erected. They will try to escalate. They will increase the volume, the drama, and the urgency. They might switch tactics from aggressive accusation to pitiful victimhood, all designed to lure you back onto the battlefield. They will say things like, "How dare you dismiss me like that?" Or, "If you loved me, you would explain why you did X." Remember, their goal here is not truth, it is engagement. Any explanation, even a short one, signals that the supply line is still open, and they will redouble their efforts to break your resolve and force you to defend yourself again. But you have changed the rules of the game, and you are holding the cards. When you maintain that silence, when you stick to gray rock or implement no contact, they enter phase 2, rage. This rage is not just anger at you. It is a primal terror stemming from the perceived threat of abandonment and exposure. The silence forces them to sit with their own uncomfortable feelings, which is something they are completely incapable of doing. They require external drama to distract them from their own internal emptiness. When you refuse to explain, you are tacitly asserting that their opinion about your life, your decisions, or your character no longer holds weight. You are saying, without words, your judgment is irrelevant to my reality. For the narcissist, who needs to be the ultimate authority figure, this is an existential crisis. They feel devalued, disregarded, and utterly stripped of their perceived power. This is when the mask truly slips, and you see the wounded, fragile ego hiding beneath the bravado. They will deploy every tactic in their arsenal. Expect smear campaigns to intensify, where they desperately try to discredit your silence by painting you as the cold, unstable, or heartless one. They will use flying monkeys, mutual acquaintances or family members, to badger you, asking you why you are being so unreasonable. Just talk to them, the flying monkeys will urge. But you must remember that their panic is proof that your strategy is working. Their frantic attempts to provoke a response are simply a desperate cry for their drug of choice, your attention and justification. The critical distinction here is understanding that your silence is not a sign of weakness. It is the ultimate expression of personal power and sovereignty. When you stop explaining, you are withdrawing your consent to participate in their distorted reality. You are finally recognizing that you cannot negotiate with a delusion, and that the only person you owe a detailed explanation to is yourself. This shift is monumental for your own healing journey, creating a space for self-validation that was previously filled by their criticism. The true moment of victory, or perhaps the moment of profound relief, comes when the narcissist enters phase 3, boredom and withdrawal. They are fundamentally lazy when it comes to effort that does not directly feed their ego. Once they realize that the well is dry, that your boundary is impermeable, and that their tactics no longer yield the desired supply, they will begin to look elsewhere. They will start grooming new sources, because hunting for supply that fights back and defends itself is simply too much work. This withdrawal might feel strange. After the initial storm of rage and escalation, the sudden quiet can be unsettling, almost like the eye of the hurricane. But cherish this silence. This quiet means they have moved on to easier targets, confirming that their relationship with you was purely transactional. You were a role, a position in their play, not a genuinely valued human being. This realization, though painful, is the final piece of evidence you need to confirm your decision to disengage was the right one. We need to talk about the concept of the reframe. When you stop explaining, you are effectively reframing the dynamic from "you are my judge" to "you are simply a character in my past." This change in perspective is a psychological weapon of mass self-protection. Every time they try to bait you, remind yourself, I am not explaining my actions to anyone whose goal is to invalidate me. This is where your self-respect becomes the strongest shield imaginable. Many people fear that stopping the explanation will make the narcissist win the narrative battle. They worry that if they do not defend themselves, the narcissist's lies will become the accepted truth among peers. But here is the secret. Anyone who truly matters, anyone who values your character and integrity, will eventually see through the narcissist's frantic, desperate attempts to control the story. People see the difference between calm silence and hysterical overreaction. Trust that the truth has a quiet way of revealing itself without your intervention. The feeling of finally releasing the need to explain is like dropping a 1,000-pound weight you did not even realize you were carrying. Suddenly, you have access to mental bandwidth that was previously dedicated entirely to preparing your defense arguments. Imagine what you can achieve when all that energy is redirected back into your own life, your passions, and your genuine relationships. This is not just about coping with a narcissist. It is about choosing to live fully for yourself. Stopping the explanation process is a clear boundary statement. It tells the narcissist, "My life is my business, and your permission is not required." Boundaries are meant to protect you, not to change the narcissist. They will hate the boundary, they will test the boundary, but if you hold firm, they will ultimately respect it by leaving your space, because violating it is too costly in terms of lost supply and wasted effort. Think of it this way: your words are precious, they hold value. Why waste them on someone who uses them as kindling? Reserve your vulnerability, your deepest thoughts, and your justifications for people who have proven they are capable of reciprocating trust, empathy, and respect. A narcissist simply lacks the internal capacity to process genuine vulnerability. They see it only as a pathway to exploitation. I want you all to practice the pause. When the narcissist launches an attack or demands an explanation, pause. Take a deep breath. Do not immediately respond to the emotional trigger. The longer you wait, the more clarity you gain, and the easier it is to choose silence or a simple, neutral statement like, "That is noted," or "I will not be engaging in this discussion." This immediate pause is your key to stopping the automatic defense mechanism. Remember, the goal is not to win an argument. The goal is to win back your peace. The narcissist measures victory by your submission and engagement. You measure victory by your internal calm and the preservation of your sanity. When you choose silence, you are choosing your sanity, and that is a victory that no smear campaign or emotional manipulation can ever take away from you. This journey of stopping the explanation is profoundly tied to healing the parts of yourself that believed you needed external approval to be worthy. It is a daily practice of radical self-acceptance. You are worthy simply because you exist, not because you successfully proved your innocence to a biased judge. Embrace your inherent worthiness. Now, let us briefly address the fear that many have. But what if they get worse? Yes, initially, they will escalate their behavior because their control is threatened. But they cannot sustain that escalation indefinitely when there is zero payoff. The tantrum will eventually subside when they realize the audience has left the theater. Hold the line, knowing that the initial temporary pain of their rage is far better than the sustained, chronic pain of continuous emotional labor and over-explaining. I want you all to commit to one thing starting today. For the next 48 hours, if that person demands an explanation for something that is purely your personal choice, just refuse. Do not argue about the refusal, just decline the invitation to engage. Experience the power shift that happens when you keep that energy, that precious life force, reserved for yourself. Notice how quickly they resort to completely new, bizarre tactics to try and pull you back in, confirming that your silence is their greatest fear realized. This process is about creating emotional unavailability specifically for toxic people. You are not being cold. You are being protective. You are safeguarding your internal environment. If they ask why you didn't call, simply say, "I was busy." If they demand to know why you went out with certain people, respond with, "I enjoyed my time." Notice there is no justification, no defense, only a statement of fact that requires zero input from them. It takes practice, especially if you have been conditioned since childhood to constantly justify your feelings. Be patient with yourself. There will be slip-ups, moments where you feel tempted to dive back into the argument. But recognize those as old habits, not genuine needs. Every time you successfully hold your tongue, give yourself credit. You are literally rewiring your brain for peace. The biggest takeaway today is that the narcissist needs your words and your energy to exist in their manufactured reality. By stopping the explanations, you cut the supply, you destroy their control, and most importantly, you reclaim your own narrative and your psychological freedom. The power was always in your hands. You just had to learn how to wield the silence. This liberation is an ongoing process, But standing firm on this one boundary, the refusal to explain, is the fastest route to regaining your self-respect and truly moving forward with your life. You are strong enough to handle their reaction because their reaction is confirmation that you are finally succeeding in prioritizing yourself. So, that is the shocking truth about what happens when you decide your peace is more valuable than their temporary satisfaction. If this message resonated with you, if you have experienced the absolute terror in a narcissist's eyes when you just stop talking, please let me know in the comments below. Hit that like button if this helped you understand the power of your silence. Subscribe so you do not miss our next deep dive into narcissistic abuse recovery. And share this video with anyone who is currently feeling exhausted by the constant demand for explanation. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in the next video.